I want to focus on the MSG curtain call. What happened? Scott Hall's contract was up, your contract was up, and so was X-Pac's. And you guys go to Vince, and you're talking down there to the people over at Turner. They're going to give you guys guaranteed money, correct? And you can take that to Vince and see if he'll match it so that you can stay in New York. Is that how it went down?
Yeah, we were actually in Scott had given his notice first. The language of the contract back then was that you had to give your notice that you weren't going to let the contract roll over within 90 days. So, and it was back then you signed a 3-year deal, so they owned you for 3 fucking years. So, my deal was coming up on June the 6th. Was my deal was coming up. So, Scott gave his notice, but I had to give my notice. And we were short. Like Scott and I were like, I think he was a week or 2 before mine. It was kind of crazy how it worked out. And so I gave my notice, and we had TV in Stockton, California, and I went outside and talked because I had to send the FedEx to Vince's office to make sure that that they had received my notice. So they received my notice, and then that was the first chance that Vince and I were face to face since he had got my notice. And I went down to Destin, Florida, and that's where me and Tamara sat down there together. My wife. People that don't know, of course, you know my wife, Tamara.
Yeah.
And we sat down there in Destin, and I went back and forth. It just, can I do this? Can I not? I mean, just to send the fucking letter was. I knew I was going to semi-burn that bridge with Vince, but I mean, I didn't. I'd only sent it. I said, in the letter, I was hoping that, that this was just that I didn't want to further this contract, that I needed a different contract, but I in no means was saying that I was leaving the WWF. And so we sat there and we talked, and I told him pretty much what the offer was on the table from the Turner organization. And fucking, he just kind of looked at me and gulped, and he took it was just good fucking Vince McMahon, it's just that fucking good, because he was, the no sell kind of, and it took like 4 or 5 steps away, and then slowly turned around like Clint Eastwood and fucking High Plains Drifter and said, "I thought we were family." Hit you with a bam. And I was like, "Fuck, we are, man." I'm just asking you. I said, "Man, I got a wife at home that's pregnant." She's like, I think at that point, man, Tamara's like 7 months pregnant. I said, it's pretty fucking hard to run a family waiting on whether or not you're going to be fucking booked at WrestleMania and have a fucking good year or not.
And people, you got to understand, this is before the day, man. There's never been a guaranteed contract in history, correct?
Right.
For this kind of money, anyway, there might have been a 100G contract, but this is first big-time guaranteed money. And, man, when you're in the business, you're beating up down the road, and you don't know what you're going to make, and all of a sudden you can see what you will make, and it's a shit pile. You're highly attracted to it. So decision time, you got to do what you got to do, and you guys all decide to go down south, correct?
Right. So we went ahead and made the decision, and which was great for Scott, because then he knew he was, going back down there alone. And so but I just told Vince, match the offer. And he said, I can't. He said, but match the offer of you. He said, he named 4 or 5 guys that were still on the roster. And he said, I'd have to match that offer to them. He says, because it ain't like fucking you ain't going to tell Sean, and you're going to tell Mark, Brett. I'll be signing this fucking deal for everybody. He said, I just can't afford to do that. So I said, I understand. So, it's over. We stay friends. I said, but I got to do what I got to do. And then he said to me, he said, well, I'd like you to put Taker over at WrestleMania. I said, fucking, it would be an honor to put Mark over. I watched that motherfucker work with broke ribs,
Yeah, Mark's one of the toughest guys in the history of the business, and a stand-up guy that everybody loves. So you did business with him.
Did business. He said, I'd like you to do a job for Taker. He said, I'd like you to do a job for Sean in Omaha in your house. That'd be lying. He said, I'd like you to put the Ultimate Warrior over on Raw. And I said, well, I'd be an honor if I can put Mark over. I said, of course, I'd do anything for fucking Sean. He got me to the fucking dance. I said, as far as the Elephant Warrior, if he can take one on me, it's all his. And he said, well, maybe we don't have that Raw match then. I said, yeah, probably not.
So then we roll into Madison Square Garden, and it's you guys in a cage, right?
Yep, and this is back in the days, and people think that, you know, that no, it was bullshit. You know, that whole drug testing era. We were drug tested for 3 years. There wasn't a fucker in the WWF. From when I walked in that door to the day I left, there wasn't a fucker taking steroids. There wasn't nobody smoking pot. Booze and pills, well, you know, you get them from a doctor, and alcohol's legal. But anything illegal fucking was not being fucking allowed in that locker room. And we're driving up to the fucking building, and Scott looked at me and he goes, well, this is the last time we're going to be at the Garden. He says, let's work this motherfucker stoned. I said, man, I hadn't been stoned fucking for 3 years. He said, we fucking pulled one out. He had fucking a little bit of fucking weed, and we fucking smoked one. You walk in the Madison Square Garden, and it fucking the house was a $350,000 house.
So what was the card? You guys come in a little bit lit. What's the card?
The card. The last two matches are Triple H versus Scott Hall. And then the main event is in a cage for the world title is Diesel against the champion, Shawn Michaels.
So it was you and Shawn in the cage at the end. They had already worked.
Yeah.
I had jerked the curtain that night. I was like a second or third match. And because that's what I did, I was at the curtain watching the matches. I watched everything go down. You guys, who was in the main event? Was that Shawn and you?
Yeah, me and Shawn.
It was you and Shawn. The match is over. And then here comes Triple H, X-Pac, and fucking Scott.
No, X-Pac wasn't there. It was just
X-Pac wasn't there?
He wasn't there. It was
Thanks
just
for correcting me. Go ahead.
Yeah, Hunter and Scott came down the aisleway, but they came back down the aisleway after just having a match. So Sean super kicked me, walked over my body, you know, AKA Bruno style. Walked out the fucking door, hit the floor, and then took another 2 steps, turned back and looked at me, and then he kind of shook his head and walked back in the door, and then like picked me up. If you remember, he kind of picked me up on my head, like kind of like the wounded warrior type thing, you know. And kind of I came to, and I kind of, because I did want to not sell his kick, so I went to the ropes and kind of sold. They gave those guys time to come down. We all did our things, and the thing was, we said, "Hey, you know, this is our last time in the Garden. Can we do this thing?" And Vince didn't think anything of it. We were supposed to be going out to dinner afterwards, and you know, it just kind of took on. It wasn't like we just did it. I mean,
so y'all didn't break it down. Y'all didn't say, "Hey, man, let's go out there and give one big fucking hug." It was just kind of in a moment type thing that happened.
Yeah.
Because, man, as it was going down, you got to understand, man, people that listen these days, I mean, everybody's kind of smart to what's going on. But back then, the business was still, even after all the exposés, the 2020s and all the bullshit, the business was still somewhat protected. And damn sure it was protected in Madison Square Garden in a steel cage. All of a sudden, you guys go out there and hug, and I'm thinking, what in the fuck is going on from the curtain? I can't believe what I'm seeing. It was shocking, dude. That's a shoot. You know, I didn't know I didn't know where to shit or wind my watch. You guys are hugging in the Garden.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things, man. It wasn't planned. It was organic. It was 4 guys that have been fucking through hell and back for so many years. You know, a couple of thousand days, about 1,000 days at least, on the road together, and it just kind of, we hugged and we went to the corners, and man, I looked out in the crowd, there were people crying, and because everybody knew we were leaving, and it was, you know, it was just.
That's the thing, people crying in Madison Square Garden. When you get over in front of a Garden crowd, whether they love you or love to hate you, they love you. And you're over, and you're part of that that family, so to speak. And they pay money to see your ass. And if you can get over in front of a Garden crowd, you can get over anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, and that was that. That was that. You know, it was a moment that, in retrospect, you know, wasn't the right thing to do. Probably not, but it wasn't done. It wasn't. It was never done with any kind of malice. It was done. Was asked for. It was done out of respect for the guys. And we did a little thing at the end where me and Scott kind of like squared off with Hunter and Sean, like, you know. But basically, what we had talked about in the car was, this isn't the end of the fucking Kliq, man. This is just divide and conquer. We're gonna go down. We're gonna go down south and take over the other fucking company. You guys still fucking run this one. You know, so we basically looked at it as you know, the Kliq's gonna run the fucking wrestling world. That's the way we looked at it.
You guys gonna form you another hub down south.
Yeah. So, you know, we just we did the divide and conquer, and lo and behold, I mean, as I've said a million times, and we've said a million times, that picture in the back of the bus with that crew of guys, and you look at the fucking Monday Night Wars, and there ain't fucking a whole lot of guys that ain't on top of that fucking, you know, and that picture right there that weren't instrumental in the Monday Night Wars. Oh,
it was an incredible ride. That bus, the camaraderie back there, the friendships made, and all the shenanigans, the drinking, everything else that was going on. It was a great time.